and 11, please.
Mayor, I'll respond to those.
Okay. I think I had a motion to approve the docket for Tuesday from Councilmember Gorton, and a second from Councilmember Lane, I think. All right, now we're ready to talk about public hearings on which items?
Ordinance number 10 and 11.
I'm not sure. I don't have a copy of the docket. Here we go.
Yeah, do it on him.
So the question is whether we wish to have hearings on items 10 and 11 under ordinances for first reading.
Mayor,
Councilmember James.
I move to place both on the docket without a hearing, both 10 and 11.
Second.
Thank you.
I have a motion to amend the document to reflect that items 10 and 11 will not have public hearings. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor of so amending the docket, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now ready to vote on the approval of the docket as amended. Any discussion? Oh, good. Councilmember Blevins.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, the administration has been working with Kentucky Infrastructure Authority to begin the process to secure some low-interest loans as we begin our new day with the sanitary sewers. Those low-interest loans are in the amounts of 1% and 3% kind of money. They need approval to go ahead and make those applications, so I'd like to walk that on today. I move to place on the docket for the Thursday, February 21st, 2008 council meeting, a resolution authorizing the mayor on behalf of the Urban County government to submit an application in the amount of $80,764,000 to the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority for low-interest loans at a rate of 1% or 3% to facilitate 9 sanitary sewer projects or upgrades. The loan rates offered by the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority are significantly lower than the rates LFUCG would receive through our bonding process. So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Blevins and a second by Councilmember Beard to amend the docket by adding the item authorizing application for KIA funding. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. Recently, we learned that House Bill 447 has been filed in the legislative session, and House Bill 447 would prohibit legislative bodies, fiscal courts, or planning commissions from adopting any ordinances or land use regulations or other conditions requiring affordable housing be made part of residential developments. And I feel, as do many council members, that these particular decisions should be made at the local level. They should be debated and discussed at the local level and not mandated by the state. So Councilmember James and Councilmember Myers and I have been working with our law department and have a resolution to walk onto the docket. And so I move to place on the docket for the Thursday, February 21st, 2008 council meeting a resolution opposing House Bill 447 pertaining to the prohibition of local governments requiring that affordable housing be provided as part of residential developments. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Gordon, second by Councilmember Myers to add the resolution opposing House Bill 447 to the docket for this Thursday evening. Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Is there anyone else? Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. I passed around a letter or circulated a letter, should have come out to the council members on Friday, and it's in regard to House Bill 43, House Bill 163, and Senate Bill 85. I think all the council members had a chance to look at that by now, and I have a resolution that I'd like to walk on for the docket. And if I could read this, resolution number in 2008, whereas Election in Fayette Urban County government supports the members of the armed forces who make great sacrifices to protect and serve our nation, And whereas we know that many members of the armed forces in Lexington and throughout Kentucky often struggle to support their families while serving their country, and whereas the compensation they receive for service should not be subject to taxation and withholding, and whereas various legislation is pending in the General Assembly that would either exempt military pay from the state income tax or provide rebates for taxes paid on military income, and whereas the rebate plan would be dependent upon future revenue and budget allocations, and whereas the exemption plan would permanently and automatically put more money in the hands of military families for living expenses during the year, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of Lexington-Fayette Urban County Government, Section 1, that the preamble to this resolution be incorporated by reference as if fully set out herein.
Second.
Section 2, that the General Assembly is urged to approve legislation to permanently exempt military pay from the Kentucky income tax. Section 3, that copies of this resolution shall be sent to Lexington's representatives in the General Assembly, the Governor, the President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House. Section 4, that this resolution shall become effective on the date of its passage, passed by Urban County Council, Mayor, and so I move to place on the docket for February 21st, 2008, meeting a resolution supporting legislation to permanently exempt military pay from Kentucky income tax. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Myers, second by Councilmember McCord to add the resolution just read by Councilmember Myers to the docket on February 21st. Any discussion? Councilmember Gordon.
Yes, Mayor. When council members recuse or disqualify themselves, they're supposed to publicly state why, and I need to have it on the public record that I disqualify myself. Both my husband and my son are military, so would benefit from this, so I wish to disqualify myself and have that on the permanent record.
So noted. Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Those then in favor of amending the docket to add Councilmember Myers' resolution, please let it be known by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Any further motions with regard to the docket? Seeing none, I think we're prepared to vote on approving the document as now amended. Those in favor of approving the docket as amended, please let it be known by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the February 12th summary. Is there a motion? Councilmember James has moved the approval of the February 12th summary. Councilmember Myers has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Takes us down to budget amendments. Item 4 on the agenda.
Move approval.
I have a motion by Councilmember Gorton, second by Councilmember Myers to approve the budget amendments. Any discussion? Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like some further clarification on number 17709-10 in regards to the Division of Park and Recreation budget. It looks like here that we're reappropriating funds, and just want to see where we're reappropriating them from. Is anybody here that can?
Commissioner Cole, or Cole, either one.
Hill or Cole? Either one.
Just as in all the other funds except the general fund, we have reappropriated this one's from public facilities. So it doesn't affect the general fund reappropriation.
So where did the 331 come from? 331,000.
I'm sorry, what page are you on? I'm sorry.
Well, page 12, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
It was the second from the top, 17709-10.
I'll have to get with some of the budget folks. I'm not really sure exactly what this one was doing. I did see that it was Public Facilities Corporation. I'm not really sure what this is doing. I'll get back to you before we end here today.
Okay, because
Okay.
the two questions I have is, one, where the money's coming from being reappropriated, and two is park acquisition. I mean, it looks like we're taking money from that fund as well.
I think I know the answer to
Go.
this. This is the money from the building permits. A portion of each building permit goes into park acquisition fund. This is reappropriating those dollars from the previous year and bringing them forward.
So this is from '07 budget
Yes.
year, moving them to '08,
Correct.
and we're working on '09. So why decrease the fund by $136,000? This is a decrease.
It was decreasing the '07 and moving it into '08. This particular one got missed when the reappropriations of the other funds were done, and it just came to our attention a couple weeks ago, so they went ahead and processed it through.
Okay, so the 136 we've spent on items, other acquisitions, or, because it looks like we started at 467, 860, decreased it by 136, and we come out with our 331, which we're reappropriating. So,
I don't know the answer to that question. This amendment was not spending any money. It was trying to put it into the correct accounts from previous year into this year, but I don't know the exact answer to that question.
can you get us more detail on that? Because I know a lot of divisions would like to reappropriate things as well. I know that doesn't apply to you, what we're talking about, but this does add to that debate as why we're allowing this to be reappropriated, and how we get these numbers is what I'm asking you, where these numbers come from.
Yes, I will get an answer to your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Any further, Councilmember James?
Thank you, Mayor. My question has to do with Journal 17704. Looks like building inspection. Someone could come forward on that one? Mr. Grow? How are you?
Fine, Mayor.
Good. I know during our council links last year, we talked a lot about computer equipment that was needed to bring you up to where we needed to be in building inspection. And so for this particular contract for technical consultant, can you tell us what's going on? Do we have all the equipment that we need? And what type of support is it that we're looking for?
The money that was put into our account last year was to upgrade, move us towards mobile computing capabilities in the field, and to put in place software to accomplish that. In going forward, there's some problems that have come up with our existing program. We can't just modify it to do that. That program has to be completely rewritten. There is some, as Computer Services has informed me, they have some serious doubts that that program is going to basically maintain the data without corrupting it over the next few months. So they are going to move ahead with, excuse me, with completely rewriting that program, and we're going to try to include some additional functionality into that program. And once that's done, then we want to use the rest of the funding to purchase mobile computers and move towards that, which is what the money was put in there to begin with for. But no, we've not purchased any equipment at this time due to this ongoing software problem. We've just now come to a decision with Computer Services as to how best to remedy that problem, and that there is going to be a rewrite of the program, and that's expected to take at least 2 months. I think their target right now is June 1st to have that completed. If that looks on track, then we want to go ahead and purchase some additional computer equipment to make use of the additional functionalities of the rewrite and to utilize that money at that time.
Okay, with the existing funds that we've allocated from the FY08 budget?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that. I also have a question on Journal 19663-64, traffic engineering. Is there anyone here to respond to that? Okay, I'll get with someone else later. How about 17702, traffic control, 2005 projects?
Commissioner Kelly is out of town this week.
Okay.
If you'd like, we can try to get somebody from traffic engineering to come over now or visit with you later?
I can do it offline, that's
Okay.
fine. Is there anybody here at all that can respond to any of the further journal items at all that's here presently related to community development? Okay.
Here's Ms. King.
Okay, here's
I'm
Paula.
sorry.
She's hiding in the corner back there. I have a question regarding Journal 17711. Has to do with the case management component for Newtown Pike. What is the case management component for Newtown Pike component?
Basically, as Commissioner Ham discussed last week, it's where they are allocating 2 social workers to work with the residents that are in the Newtown Pike area to relocate them or to help them maintain and stabilize if they want to stay in the area. But it's a service to help work with the residents that will still be in the neighborhood to help them adjust to the new neighborhood.
Similar to the Hope 6 project, what was done there? And do you know when, evidently this is something that's been planned from the beginning of the project?
No, this
No.
just came up.
Oh, okay. Do you know who those folks will be, who those 2 workers will be?
No, they're going to be hired out of adult services. Adult services is going to take the lead.
There'll be 2 new positions?
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's all that I have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
To backtrack just a minute, I think Commissioner Cole may have some information to follow up on an earlier question. Commissioner Cole?
Councilman Stinnett, this is actually 2 different adjustments that are in one budget amendment. The first is to bring forward the $467,000 from 2007 to 2008. The other is to recognize that the revenue projection on what should go in for 2008 is too high because building permits are down.
And to that point, we're budgeting the '09 budget, and I don't know what we're going to budget or what you all have worked on yet. I don't know if that's probably not your area, but we need to take a look at that because these numbers aren't going to go up every year. And, I'm not sure that program itself we need to look at. Because I know you all have a maintenance headache in parks right now we haven't corrected yet, and you all need help. And if acquiring more land will not help your current situation, and that may be something we can look at in the '09 budget. So thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. Rama, could you come up just for a second, please? I have a follow-up question to the Journal 17704. Thank you. We just heard building inspection talk about the software that's going to be written to, I'm not sure what the software is going to do, but is there possibly an out-of-the-box solution for this rather than actually writing a program to do what needs to be done? Because it sounds like we're only going to use that for about 2 months as an interim before we move to the new technology.
Yeah, there is an out-of-box solution that we're looking into. It's part of the comprehensive CRM package we're looking at for building inspection, code enforcement, fleet, and a number of other divisions that we can bring all into one package along with LexCall. What we're doing right now is to fix the problems that are in the system currently, and it's going to take us a while to implement the CRM solution. So once we're not spending a lot on redoing it currently, so we're just going to get it back up to speed.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Now, let me just tell everybody my screen is sometimes it appears my screen is working, sometimes it isn't. So if you think you've indicated you wish to speak and I don't call on you, just wave at me or something. And if I call on you and you don't want to speak, then just let me know that too. Councilmember Blevins.
Thanks, Mayor. Rama, I'm sorry we let you get all the way back. You can just nod. Is this a mainframe application? Is this a mainframe application, the one for, yes? And we're trying aggressively to get off the mainframe still, correct? Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
Good questions. Anything further with regard to budget amendments? I think we have a motion to approve them. Those in favor of approving the budget amendments, please let it be known by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're now down to the items of new business. Is there a motion? I have a motion by Councilmember Blevins, second by Councilmember Myers to approve the items of new business. I have Councilmember James on my screen. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have several questions on this. On new business item B, there is anyone that could speak regarding this one? I have questions on B, C, D, and P. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, Councilmember.
From which fund will the money come from for this for the non-residential infill development?
That comes from our professional services money that was budgeted by the council for FY08.
Professional services fund?
Yes.
And that's all that I have for you regarding this. Shay, can I ask you a question on this? It's the same. I have a question for Shay on the same item.
Okay. Stand by.
We've corresponded by email regarding the UDAG funds. Is this also, will UDAG funds be used for this project as well? Is this
Are we
related
talking about
to
item B?
B, the infill and redevelopment? Is this related to the sidewalk study?
I cannot answer that question, but I will find someone who can. Paula? And I believe Joe Kelly's outside in the hallway. Do you know? According to Ms. King, it is not UDAG funds for item B.
Okay. Chris, is this the sidewalk study? This is the streetscape study? What study is this specifically?
This study is one that we've tried to get for a long time that would be a community-wide look at ways we can facilitate non-residential infill and redevelopment. In 2001, we had a residential infill and redevelopment study that we've taken a lot of actions based on that study that we feel has really helped boost our infill and redevelopment efforts. We think we can replicate the same kind of success in business and non-residential type of setting. So it's more of a community-wide type of study.
Okay. And when we approved the budget for this in FY08, do you know how much was allocated for this originally?
I believe it was, we estimated out of the $600,000 that the council budgeted, around $100,000-ish for this.
Okay.
So it's right about on target.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Certainly.
While, if you don't mind, I think Councilmember Stinnett has another question on the same topic.
Chris, can you just give me I know you've been wanting to do this study for a long time, and I'm glad you're finally going to get an opportunity. We're doing the whole urban service boundary or the whole county?
It will be primarily the urban service area, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember James.
Thank you, Mayor. On item C, the share the road, Paula, is that you? Or... Is this you?
I can't answer specifics. I mean, we did the blue sheet, but I can't answer specific questions if you want details.
Okay, so you sign off on it?
We do the blue sheet in regards to the application, but depends on what kind of details you want. Ask your question, I'll try to answer your question.
Well, good. I hope you'll do your best. Okay. Is this simply funding used for education and brochures for this program? Who would know the answer to this if you don't know?
If I don't, it actually would be out of Commissioner Kelly's office. It would actually be out of, I'm sorry, I don't have it present in front of me. 1 second. It actually is going to be out of, I mean, it talks about a media campaign for bicycle and pedestrian safety, so it doesn't really indicate, I'm assuming at this point it would be maybe planning.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Mayor, I just have to say something regarding this. I mean, you know, the packet is the only information that we have. Citizens that are watching are relying on this packet information. The staff that we have coming forward to the podium to answer the questions, we need to know how we're spending our money and what the money is being spent on. And sometimes it appears when people come to the mic, they don't even have the knowledge of the information in the packet. And I'm not picking on Paula specifically, but this is, I mean, we're here to do the people's business, right? That's what you said. You used to say that all the time before we started. People come to the mic and we don't have the information. We're voting on this stuff. And I would just ask, before we come to work session, that we all know what's in the packet, that we read this information so that we know when we're voting and when we're sharing this information with the public, we know what's going on. And I don't know what we can do. I don't know how to make things better.
Normally, Commissioner Kelly would be here. As I indicated previously, he's out of town, and I think most of the issues for which we don't have ready answers today are issues that come somewhere in the Public Works and Development Department. We can do one of two things. We can postpone consideration of the issues that concern you, ones where you don't feel like you have adequate information, and have someone here at the next work session to answer those particular questions. If you prefer, we can postpone consideration of those items now and have somebody from the particular divisions who are responsible for them come on over. You may recall previously, work sessions had an awful lot of people sitting here for an awful lot of time, and what we tried to do was be more efficient about how we have people sitting here waiting. Obviously, today we don't have the right people here, and I'm not arguing that we do, because we don't. But that's why they're not here, and to the degree you either want to postpone it until later in the meeting or to the next work session, no reason not to do that.
Okay. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember McCord.
To that, Councilmember James, I think just for some clarity on that particular item, on the share of the road item, it is a application for money and not necessarily an application, or it's not to spend our money. And what that came from was the MPO, all of the things that we are applying for from the federal government that come through the state, through the federal grants, either the transportation enhancement or the CMAQ grants. And so that's what that particular item is. I know there's a much deeper issue you're really asking about, but on that particular one, it is just applications that we're making, the government is making to receive that money.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
All right. I have, are you to Councilmember James? Okay. Councilmember Stennett's the next person I have on my list.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for Commissioner Coe, if you could get all the council members, I notice we're starting to see more and more new business items that are using the personnel contingency budget. I know we often get that confused with personnel lapse money, but this is actually monies that are budgeted. Can we get a copy of everyone's personnel contingency budget to date? Are we able to do that right now? Do we have the capability of how much they budgeted and how much they've spent? Can we run those reports? Okay. Can you get us a copy of those before in another week or 2 weeks, however long it takes? No, ma'am. No.
Absolutely. By department or division?
By department. Be fine. Thank you.
Any other questions with regard to items of new business? I don't have anybody else listed on my list right now. Then we have a motion on the floor to approve the items of new business. Those in favor of approving those items, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. I believe that gets us to the point on the docket where we're ready for the presentations, and the first one is the Intergovernmental Committee. And I'm not sure who's making that. Oh, Councilmember James.
Thanks, Mayor. Intergovernmental committee met. Out of that committee, I guess I should make a motion. I was selected chair of that committee since Richard Maloney has left us. That motion was made by Councilmember Blues and seconded by Councilmember Myers, so I will bring that forward.
We have a motion to approve, I suppose, the selection of Councilmember James as chair, and a second by Councilmember Myers. Any discussion? Those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you. There's also a correction that's needed on the minutes. In Section 3, it says that Shay and Anna Whaley was present. Actually, Anna Hartshee was the representative present. So if Madam Clerk, if we could get that edited. Thank you very much, or revised. And the last motion that came out of committee was a motion made by Councilmember Myers for the administration to put together a draft policy for the committee to review with regards to boards and commissions, seconded by Councilmember Blues. If I can bring that motion forward, please. Thank you.
I have a motion by Councilmember James, and a second by Councilmember Myers for the administration to prepare a policy with regard to boards and commissions. Any discussion? Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
The end.
Thank you. I believe that takes us down now to the presentation by Commissioner Taylor concerning our sanitary sewers. So if Commissioner Taylor and Director Martin will step forward.
Brought some copies of the presentation that we want to make today. What we'd like to do is really respond to Councilmember Blevins' request last week to talk a little bit about the implementation plan. A lot of the work that you have done over the last couple of years really has been in preparation for the work that now we face for the next several years. And since we're just getting started, it's a good time to talk about where are we on these things, what's going on, what do we have to do, and just to give you an overview. And the challenge for me is to try to boil this down into a pretty short session, but still cover enough detail to answer your questions. So that's what I'm trying to do here, but your questions are welcome. And if I don't know the answer, I have some very capable people here with me, including Charlie Martin, who knows quite a few of the details. So let's see with that. I think the request originally from Councilmember Blevins was to talk about the implementation plan. And let's see if I can get this. The thing that's really interesting for me about this whole situation is the timing that I have been blessed with coming to work for the city, because there couldn't be a greater opportunity for a person like me. The water quality problems that we have in Lexington, as many of us who've lived here, I've lived here for 34 years, we know this is a problem. It has been for quite a while. But we have the opportunity at this point in time to actually solve this problem. And we have the obligation as well to take action now with the EPA consent decree. The intervention that we will be making over the next several years will really be the foundation for Lexington's environmental future. Probably all of you noticed in the paper this morning, Lexington's rating is the 25th greenest city, certainly the greenest in Kentucky. I'm very pleased to have the honor to work with a city with that kind of a reputation, but now it's time for us to take care of this problem in order for us to move to the top 10. That would be our goal. Background information, you all have lived through this probably more than I have, but as you know, the beginning of the consent decree was back in August 2005 when EPA requested information from the city. There was a show cause hearing nearly a year later in Atlanta. The complaint was filed in November of '06, and serious and formal negotiations have been ongoing for over a year now. And finally today, with the vote from the council and then moving forward into the approval from Region 4, we will have an agreement. So that's a lot of time boiled down to one little quick slide. We talked a little bit earlier when Jack was up about the terminology and the key dates, and as you'll notice, some of the projects that we're going to mention in the next few minutes, it matters whether we're talking lodging date or effective date. The lodging date, as Jack explained, is the date that the consent decree is filed with the court, and Jack also explained to me that the official 30-day public comment period actually starts a few days after that, because it has to go into the Federal Register. So it's close to 30 days after lodging, but actually a few days beyond that. And as he mentioned earlier, we expect that lodging date to fall sometime between mid and late March. The effective date is the date that's something of a moving target. That's the date when the consent decree is entered by the court. We don't have complete control over that, and I think in worst-case scenarios that's taken some time, but we're not expecting, as Jack mentioned, for that to take as long as it did in northern Kentucky. The obligations, sanitary sewer obligations, really is about water quality improvement, and we included the pictures of our two flagship plants that we have here in Lexington that we manage at Ham Branch and West Hickman. A lot of the opportunity areas certainly are around those plants and then some of the systems that feed them. We have some early action projects that have to be completed within the specified date of the consent decree lodging. And what a lot of this work boils down to is we have to also study and understand exactly what's going on in our system in order to eliminate wet weather sanitary sewer overflows. Those are the overflows that you hear a lot about. Whenever it rains, we have a hard rain, we have a lot of water running off. Those kinds of things, the water infiltrates, and we have a problem managing the sewer program. But we also have other types of overflows, and those tend to be more related to function and operation. Some of our maintenance and management programs and our assessment of resources will also have to happen as part of this consent decree. And the goal there would be to prevent and eliminate other overflows besides just those that you see in wet weather. That's terribly difficult to read, and we can give you a larger version. But that's our initial list of projects that we have begun to work on. Some of them are much more well-defined than others, but they include the North Elkhorn Force Main, South Elkhorn Force Main, sewer system assessments, and quite a few other items down there, and I'd be glad to give you a larger copy of that. It's not all-inclusive. It doesn't say everything that we have to do for sanitary sewers, but it's the main calendar that we're working on to try to make sure we have everything understood, whether it's from lodging or effective date. The first one that Jack already mentioned as well is this backup power at the wastewater treatment facilities. Town Branch, we have confirmation. I've checked twice in the last week just to be sure, but we will have backup power there in place on April 1st. There is some additional line work that will have to happen at that redundant system in a center section. Apparently when summer comes and air conditioners all kick on, there's a little bit of a strain on that system, but KU has, or LG&E EON has confirmed that they will have that done, and the date they actually gave me was May 28th. So there will be a section in there that does need to be shore up, but effectively on April 1st we will have redundant power as well as at West Hickman. So that would be a relief, I think, for those of you that have been through some of the power outage issues that we've had in those facilities. Other things that we are working on actively that are due 3 to 6 months are the sewer system assessment work plan, the capacity assessment work plan, and the hydraulic report. And what all of those reports do, we have engineering studies done to tell us what is our system capable of handling, where are we incapable, what do we need to do to shore that up. A lot of work has gone into bidding this process out, and we just this past week had a meeting and selected an engineering service that we want to recommend, and that will be coming to you very shortly, a couple of weeks, I think. So you can see what we went through. I think we had 8 plans that we started with. 8 different companies bid for this work. 2 of the big projects that we'll be kicking off with that a lot of pre-work has gone into as well. 24 months from the lodging date, the North Elkhorn Pump Station and Force Main construction is due. The bid opening will be about 2 weeks from now for the Force Main. Roughly, from an engineering estimate, the project will be about $17 million, and the pump station completion date is scheduled to be the 30th of June, 2008. 30 months from lodging date, we have a little bit more room for this one, but the South Elkhorn Pump Station and Force Main will be due. We have the preliminary planning for this pump station has been idle for some months, and so there was a change order required in order to update that. But that's ready to go in, I think, Charlie, next week? It's on your desk. It's on my desk, sorry. It's my fault. But that's ready to go as well. And then that total project is also estimated to be close to $17 million. Do 120 days, and you'll notice some of these are months and some of these are days from lodging date, and it goes back and forth on that chart. When I give you a bigger one that you can read a little better, you'll see it kind of goes back and forth that way. But 120 days from effective date, we have to have developed a complete list of authorized future connections. That work is being done in engineering and public works and is underway. 6 months from the effective date, we do what you may have heard of as the CMOM self-assessment, but that stands for Capacity Management, Operations, and Maintenance. And that work has been ongoing for several months. The draft is about 90% complete. And that's going to be a very important document on how we manage our systems ongoing. We also have the sewer overflow response plan. That's been worked on for several months. That draft is about 50% complete. So some of these are due early, but they're also pretty far along in development. Longer term, we have a lot more to do than just the few slides I've shared with you. Compliance with the consent decree includes other additional capital projects and system assessments that we'll have to do over the next few years. Some of these initial assessments and reports and work plans will be due to the EPA anywhere from 1 to 4.5 years from now. That's also on the schedule. I'll give you a larger copy. And we have to provide quarterly and annual updates depending on which project it is. The other thing that will happen with assessments, though, as we probably would expect, is we'll probably find other things that need remedial measures. What we're working on now is what we know about now, and we will continue to discover things that need to be improved. But we will do that through those assessments, and those will be identified and then decisions made about what we need to do. Moving into stormwater obligations, one thing that I have to say is, especially coming into this role, just being here 2 months, the sanitary sewer work, a lot of the work there are capital projects that are pretty well defined. And you think of those as moving dirt and hard hats and lots of equipment, and they're capital projects. With our stormwater obligation, we have a lot of systemic and programmatic projects that will have to happen as well. The thing that we have to do with the stormwater obligations through the consent decree is we are required to implement performance standards. Performance standards are enforceable components of this. There are deadlines. They're specific. EPA has required us to meet certain obligations in stormwater planning and has made those enforceable. But then in general, we also have, this is the thing that everybody calls the SWAMP. We sort of ignore the Q, but it's the Stormwater Quality Management Plan. We are required to implement that plan, but what EPA did not do, what we negotiated for, was to give us some flexibility on dates and times for sections of that plan. We are held accountable to the performance standards, and we are supposed to implement the plan, but not with as many specific dates. We'll be checked on that at least annually when we do our annual reporting, and then with the permit reissuances that happen over time. The other thing that we're going to be required to do as part of the stormwater obligation is to develop and implement a stormwater management fee structure within 2 years of the effective date. The effective date, again, is the target that's a little bit farther out from lodging. The performance standards, I actually started trying to do slides to give you more details about those. There are 41 of them. Some of them are a little bit repetitive, but rather than provide that detail on the slides, we can certainly give you those standards as a handout. But what they include is a range of activities from mapping and inventories, databases, ordinance development, protocols and procedures, inspections and enforcement, sampling, training, water quality monitoring, and reporting. Those things have to happen as part of our regular program. The performance standards have specified completion deadlines and also specified penalties when we do not meet those deadlines. So it can get expensive if you miss a date.
Commissioner Taylor, you've got a couple of minutes. If you can kind of wrap up in that time frame, that would be helpful.
Sure. Okay. Overall, performance management services contract, we're working on getting a complete comprehensive plan for how we're going to implement all these by the end of the month. We have to begin construction site inspections immediately, and we are also already working on impervious surface calculations. Those are targeted to be done in July. I haven't had an update on that, so I'm expecting that to happen. Next 180 days, there's some of the planning that has to happen. Draft protocols, some of those we have been working on for a while. They're about 75% complete. Databases, we've worked quite a bit with Rama's group to try to update how we manage and track the information that we gather. And we have an interim database available, but we're working on a longer-term database. We also are beginning to work with partner agencies, or I'll call other groups within city government that we have to develop relationships with, purchasing, planning, all those groups, engineering. We'll all have to work together to deliver this. This is an inspection chart. It's very difficult to see. We can give you that larger. The SEPs, you've heard a lot about those. I'll touch on those here just with the slide. We have 4 main areas that we're working on. 2 of those are pretty well developed. 2 we still have to develop. And I guess for a final summary, there's some things that we have to do in order to be able to successfully implement, and they're not all in place yet. But we recognize that we have to have full engagement government-wide. There are going to be other systems involved besides DEQ in order for this to go well. We have to work well with the council. I know I met with council members Gorton and Levins on the recommendation to put the 2 storm and sanitary committees together. And what we'd like to do is to provide at least monthly reports and discussion opportunities in that committee, and also update implementation plans as we get project updates available, which could be much more frequently than monthly. We have a lot of opportunity for public education and involvement. You heard today a request on funding strategy. We're looking for the least expensive funding that we can find. KIA appears to be our best bet. Other cities in Kentucky, 19 other cities are going through similar issues. Lexington, of course, is one of the larger ones and one of only 3 in federal. But we have a lot of opportunity to learn from other cities, and we've started to do that, reaching out to other areas that have had successful implementation. We have a lot of tracking and reporting to do. Mentioned that. That's part of the requirement of the consent decree. And then I have a couple of summaries that just let you know sanitary sewer requirements are very heavily focused in capital projects. We have quite a bit of progress on those projects at this point. Stormwater has more focus on systemic improvements and some capital. That's still more work to be developed in some of those areas. The SEPs, we have a pretty well-defined scope for a couple, and others are yet to be determined, especially around the flooding and infrastructure projects, the greening infrastructure projects. And supporting systems inside the city and outside will have to be worked in order to deliver the best result. Sorry I ran a little bit over.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Taylor. Are there any questions from the council? Councilmember Blevins.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. It was a great presentation. I think the public needs to understand why I asked for this presentation, so I want to give a little background. It's a new day in Lexington, and this program we're about to undertake is perhaps the largest program ever in the history of Lexington. It's huge. We all talk about the STARS program, which was a major overhaul of our accounting system, and that was a $10 million project that's had its share of issues, some our fault and some having to do with the vendor that originally helped us. This is hundreds of millions of dollars, and so we're going to require our best and brightest to pull this off. If we don't, there are things called stipulated penalties, which will cause us to have to pay the federal government if we miss our deadlines. So there's cash on the line here, if you're listening in. I want to reiterate some of the things you pointed out that, having to do with the complexity. It's not just the sanitary sewers. It's the stormwater quantity as well as quality. It's also enforcement of our laws to make sure that folks aren't polluting our streams. It has to do with public education on a variety of matters related to this. And finally, there are numerous reports and measurements and filings that we have to do to the federal government on time, every time. If we don't, we get in trouble yet again. And lastly, as you pointed out, there's the supplemental environmental projects, which are just another list of things that we have to do. So I want to give the public the impression of just how complicated this is and how much it's going to require of the entire government to pull it off successfully. So why am I concerned? If it's not obvious already, this is a huge undertaking, and I want to make sure that we have the management and training and staff in place to pull this off. So it's with that background that I want to ask my questions of you today. The first one is the obvious one. Who is the executive assigned in the government that's going to oversee this entire implementation? I'm assuming that's you, but I want to make sure that's true.
Well, I think probably that would be the best answer. I think the technical lead for this entire operation is Charlie. I have to say, Charlie has been unbelievably helpful to me coming into this role. Our department, though, of course, is going to be the group that's responsible for overseeing all of the activity that will happen.
Okay, I would like for you all to reflect on this. There's a study that was done a few years ago of 25,000 projects, and one of the top 10 reasons for project failure was lack of executive support or oversight. So we need one person that's on the hook ultimately to do this. I don't know if that's you, but I would encourage you and the mayor or you all to figure out who that is and assign that person. Second question I had was, what staff has been assigned or will be to provide the project management aspects of this overall program to make sure that the myriad of details gets done? And I'm talking about reports, measurements, all the things to keep us on task.
Right now, I'll take that one. Right now, there's being circulated with staff is an RFQ, a request for proposals for program management to assist us with this whole myriad of obligations that we have. As you'll recall in the financial model for sanitary sewers that we discussed several weeks ago, there's a line there that's for program management, and that was entirely what that is for, is to have someone come in and put together critical path scheduling associated with all of these deliverables so we're able to stay on task. And I intend on doing that at least through the initial 2 years, while at the same time we are looking at opportunities to ramp up staff. What I'm concerned with is that we've got a lot to do in the first 4 years. I don't think that it's prudent for us to rush out and hire a bunch of staff for something that lasts only for a short period of time. I would rather outsource the things that have a short period of time as opposed to the things that we're likely to do forever or we're certain to do forever, such as inspections, maintain, those type of things that are constant forever obligations. So that's a long answer to your question is that you'll be seeing a recommendation from us for an engineering firm to do program management for implementing the consent decree.
Okay, I agree with that approach. It's a good one. What about oversight from the council perspective? You mentioned working with the Sanitary Sewer Oversight Committee as well as the Stormwater Oversight Committee. That works well for sort of the down in the details level of the consent decree implementation, for example, those projects having to do with sanitary sewers or stormwater. But as we pointed out, there's a lot more to the consent decree than just those areas. I guess I would like to see a mechanism where the council has insight into how the overall program is going. Are we meeting our deadlines? Are we submitting our reports on time and so forth? Have you guys considered how you're going to implement that?
Well, we've considered a number of different things. Of course, we did talk about using that meeting, the monthly meeting, as a key time for us to discuss that. We've also talked about having a lot of this information available on the web, on a page, on some sort of a report that we can update very frequently. A lot of the work some of the work, you know, you might go a month and not see a whole lot happen. Others, it's going to be a weekly change, and having that kind of information updated frequently might be appropriate. I know that when I met with you about taking this position initially, one of the concerns I heard from lots of folks on the council was you wanted information and you wanted to be able to access information. So we talked with Rama about making information available to the council on whatever it is we're working on. Other mechanisms, you know, we talked about a number of different task force group of people to work on systems within city government. Like I mentioned, for example, purchasing or enforcement. We have a lot of things that we need to do to line up how we want to do this in the city as we implement the consent decree. So we had thought about some sub-teams doing different things like that. But I know the council certainly can propose whatever mechanism for communication would be best.
Well, again,
let me interject something here. I think our primary point of contact is going to be the Sewer Oversight Committee. I understand there's some move afoot to possibly combine the sanitary and storm sewers, and I think that makes an awful lot of sense. They're unfortunately more integrated now than what we would like, but the problems of one are similar to the problems with the other. So assuming that committee's consolidated, I would envision, at least initially, we're going to be giving you monthly updates about how this is progressing. We're open for suggestion about how often the council as a whole would like to get the details about this. Maybe that's quarterly, maybe it's twice a month, I don't know. But I think as we get into it a little bit, we'd be very receptive to your all's thoughts about how you'd like to proceed in terms of updates for the council as a whole.
I'll finish up, I promise. There's what I was referring to is oversight of the actual implementation of the consent decree, not the projects within the consent decree. For example, we need to do the North Elkhorn Force Main. The Sanitary Sewer Oversight Committee is the obvious one to keep an eye on that project. But we also need to ensure that we're doing all our reporting to the EPA and so forth on time. That's an oversight of the consent decree implementation itself that spans not just sanitary sewers or even stormwater, but also public education and all the other things that we've talked about today. So I would offer you two suggestions. The first one that we could do is a consent decree oversight committee or something like that. I wouldn't favor that as much as I would the second option, which is to embed maybe a handful of council members on the project team so that they get direct both interaction as well as information as we go through this. I would be okay with either one. So I would ask the council to consider that over the next couple of weeks, because once lodging occurs, we want to have a mechanism in place going forward that we're all comfortable with to make sure that we're successful. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I'd like to also recognize Commissioner Taylor for the presentation. And I couldn't help but believe that part of your presentation also had a big influence in your career and your experience at Procter & Gamble. Arguably, I guess, along with General Electric, created some of the best management and project management disciplines in America and throughout the world. So I'm hoping sort of like in Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker was encouraged by Obi-Wan to just trust his instincts. Some of that you can probably trust as well, I would say, Commissioner. And this links a little bit to what Councilmember Blevins was commenting on, the project management dimension of the project. I'm curious, Charlie, you mentioned, and either you all can answer, but the program management function, I read that in the stormwater piece, but not in sanitary. Am I hearing you correctly that you are also looking or considering a program management role for sanitary?
For both.
For both?
Yes.
Okay.
Because as the mayor pointed out, we believe they belong together. They're actually under one division now. And so I want to make sure that everything is coordinated together, not only from the implementation of the consent decree, but even moving forward. You've heard me talk various times about how we don't coordinate capital projects. We go out and tear up the street and replace the sanitary and then come back a year later and then tear up the storm sewer, which makes no sense. So we're trying to do things together in a coordinated, efficient manner.
So in considering the attributes for that role, I heard you say engineering firm or engineering firms. And when I think engineering firms, I typically will think of the technical aspects, that is the bricks and mortar, if you will, or the pipe in the ground in this project. But my understanding is that for program management, well, maybe I should ask it in a question. You're framing that scope of work as project management skill sets required, and the attributes being project management, full program management. You know, the language of program management and project management often is confusing. So when we say program management, we are speaking of the entire scope of the full the consent decree.
That whole book right there,
Right.
yes,
So
exactly.
you will be creating an RFP, or already have created an RFP for a program management role.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So can you describe the attributes of that role?
If I had it
Beyond,
with me.
you mentioned like critical path scheduling and so forth.
The critical path scheduling, one of the things I would have them responsible for was the preparation of the quarterly and annual reports that we're required to do. Some of the things that are not the bricks and mortar type of things that we're traditionally charged with doing, but they would be overseeing all of the engineering firms that are doing the specific deliverables, such as the work plan associated with the sanitary sewer assessment, or the hydraulic modeling, the capacity assessment, the development of ordinances, proposed ordinances. We have several proposed ordinances that we need to deliver to the council by a specific date. So it's their job is to orchestrate all of the deliverables associated with the consent decree, first of all by setting up that chart, that critical path chart, to where we make sure that we stay on schedule and with the work that's supposed to be done. What we haven't made a decision about some of the public education, the public participation stuff. I know that Commissioner Taylor has a strong interest in trying to centralize that at the department level so we can gain efficiencies when we bring solid waste and some other environmental initiatives that are not associated with that. But if you have suggestions for it, I'd be happy to send it to you, because all hands on deck. I'll take all the help I can get.
So, so in terms of firms right now, can you say what firm have you already gone out to firms?
No. We would. This will be advertised, and
So are there analogs in other cities where this role has been outsourced?
Yes.
Charlie? There are. Okay. So
master planning was done in Knoxville by a firm that actually the firm that we're recommending for the sanitary sewer assessment and capacity assessment work plan work. Cincinnati Metropolitan Sewer District used program management as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Henson.
I wanted to make sure there's a lot of assessments and plans and work plans that I know is necessary in order before you get to do the work. Will we get the communication from those plans, the findings of the assessments?
Yes, in a lot of different ways. One being through whatever mechanism that we utilize as far as communicating with the council. It's my intention that we have a lot of interaction with the public as our findings come out, because those findings are going to lead to a remedial measures plan, which is going to lead to the ultimate capital construction that resolves and eliminates those recurring SSOs. And in my thought, if we do not engage the council and the public through that entire process, it will not go seamlessly in 4 years from now. Also is that it's my intention to create a public repository of these particular plans and documents. If you look at KUB.org, which is Knoxville's website, they have a very good one to where people can go in and pull up the latest annual report, a latest quarterly report. That's where I've gotten a lot of the background materials that we've worked through the course of the negotiations.
Who will be conducting the assessments? Or
as I mentioned right now, is that we're in the process of negotiating with one firm that we will recommend for the first set of work plans. It's my intention is that, broken out in a proper way, is that there will be competitive bidding on a lot of these different plans, and so you'll see a series of these things being blue sheeted and coming to the council for their approval. But competitive bidding is most likely how it will be done.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Beard.
Thank you, Mayor. Charlie, while you're there, although this is a little broader question, but specifically, I mentioned some time ago at one of our discussions here the possible engagement of a public relations firm to communicate with the public. And whether that is done or not, I would like to encourage that we do communicate, especially at the end of these projects, that prior to the project we were at 10,000 parts per million of whatever, and it has now dropped to 2,000 parts per million, so that they can actually see what their dollars have gotten and continue stacking one of those achievements on top of another over time. So, and this would be something, if the newspaper would be so kind, that they could tabularly plug that in like they do stock prices once a month in Business Monday, and the public can follow along without getting mired down in all of our acronyms and things of that sort that somewhat goes over the head of people who don't work with it day by day.
I agree. One of the things I've emphasized to my staff is that, you know, now more than ever, we need to be able to demonstrate what we are doing and what we are accomplishing, because I think that in light of rate increases that are going to come about and the need to be able to fund a stormwater program, all the more need to be able to justify that there is a outcome associated with that expense. So I agree wholeheartedly. That was, again, something that Commissioner Taylor and I have talked about how we're going to do our public outreach aspect of stuff. With all the things that's been coming at her in her first 7.5 weeks, it's one that we're working on.
Well, we won't finish a project for a while, so we'll have a little time to figure out how we'll communicate that. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Taylor, congratulations on your first presentation to council, probably one of many coming up for you, so I appreciate the information. Just a couple questions. I know you and I met a couple of weeks ago. You know, the important part of this consent decree and the important part of raising any type of fee is that this government has to do what we say we're going to do, and that's through our implementation of the consent decree. What I know your departments and the guys in your all's areas in stormwater and sewers have tried to do what do best with what they've been given over the years. I know councils have backed down on funding, administrations have cut their funding. Given that climate and that the way these departments have been treated over the last 20 years, what's going to be our next step positive forward with these folks? How are we going to let them know in your department through implementation that this is for real, that the money will be that this council is going to put teeth behind this now, because we have to, thank goodness, and let the citizens know that these folks are ready to work and do the job. I know Charlie said earlier that we're not going to go out and hire a bunch of new people or do anything like that yet. But what is our timetable for doing that, and how do we motivate a workforce that has been put on the back burner for so many years?
We started that activity really about a week ago. We had the first several weeks I was in this position a number of issues with certain pump stations, overflows, problems that we were having that were somewhat wet weather related and somewhat reliability problems. And so we started off kind of on a rough foot because the expectation is any overflow is unacceptable, and we're going to do what we need to do to stop them. But what I discovered as I started to meet folks in the area is we have a lot of very capable people. Many of them have many years of service with the city, and they don't like overflows any more than I do. And so last week we had our first meeting out at Town Branch, and I met with the entire staff, the maintenance and electrical staff, and we talked about the new philosophy. We talked about opportunities to make a huge change in how we operate in the city. We talked about, and they vented some about some of the things that over the years they have not been funded to deal with. Things like 4 or 5 different motors in the same pump station can't keep parts. Different issues about design that where shortcuts were made. So we talked a lot about those opportunities, and people had a lot of really good ideas about how we might be able to improve the foundation that all this goes on is our maintenance foundation. All of the money that we're going to spend making all of these improvements in equipment have to be maintained. And so we have to have a strong program. So that was the first meeting. We have a second meeting scheduled at West Hickman with those folks next week on the 28th. And my background, not everybody cares about the details, but I spent most of my career working in a manufacturing plant, and we worked 24-hour shifts, 7 days a week. If you went down, you lost profit, so that was never good. So I understand the mentality of a constant seeking to be better. But our goals for the group are to have 0 overflows, and I want them to tell me what tools they need in order to deliver that, and then we're going to work together to do that. So I've started trying to just work with people that we have. I think we do have some shortage areas. Maybe there's some skill sets that we'll need to add. But first, we have to make sure that the people that we have in place have been given the tools to be successful. So that's what we're working on right now.
Well, and to add to that, my biggest concern is making sure we're all given a fair start. Not necessarily we're all going to finish the same spot, but giving everyone enough information that either they're on board or they're going to sink quickly. So I appreciate you taking the time to do those meetings, because I know that means a lot to the people that have been around here a long time. And Charlie, I know you've mentioned it to us several times in closed session. I think we can talk about it now. We have $130 million worth of projects that have been identified, 4 of which we'll immediately commit to doing. Which about $36 million. The other $100 million worth of projects, how are we beginning that implementation on fixing those? Are we going to wait 4 or 5 years down the road and then start tackling those, or how are we going to work that into this mix with the sanitary or sewer fee increase?
As Cheryl mentioned earlier, is that I suspect that we're going to identify remedial measures that can be done in that first 4 years as we begin the sanitary sewer assessment and the capacity assessment type of activities, which is getting ready to be awarded very soon. There are, in the financial model, there is a line called remedial measures, and that is for that purpose, is for to be able to get early action projects underway as we see them, to make corrective action as necessary. I don't want to stretch this thing out to the full duration to 11 to 13 years. I don't know if I'll make it that far. You know, the sooner the better. It's been a long haul already. I started this thing in the August of 2005 range. So there's funding in there to do corrective actions as we go to some limitation. Part of the whole way that this thing was structured is that in 4 years, the capacity assessment is going to be done. One of the things I was gravely concerned about was rushing to do projects in the collection and conveyance system, fixing overflowing pump stations, and now we're conveying so much water that we can't deal with it at the treatment plant, or we're just moving it to some other place to a new problem. We needed to have an overall grasp of what was going on and a tool that would be able to predict, if we do this, what does it do over here and what does it do over here. We will have that in roughly 3.5 years. And at that point in time is when we're going to be able to have serious discussions with the community about major remedial measures, not only at the treatment plant, but other in more significant areas where we have clustered reoccurring problems as far as wet weather.
So quickly, the top 4 projects in terms of our timing and implementation, I know by approving this consent decree, we're agreeing to have these projects done within a certain period of time. Otherwise, we face a lot of fines. The first 4 again, North Elkhorn within 2 years.
Yes.
South Elkhorn within 30 months, 36 months.
30 months. 30 months from lodging, and then Dixie and Deep Springs, which I think were 54 from lodging, and they were really just set up to where they would come in right after North Elkhorn is done, because they tie into North Elkhorn. The main reason why I encourage those projects is because they have a predictable outcome associated with them. They all pump directly to the treatment plants themselves. They don't just pump to another part of the collection system and then you've shifted the problem onto somebody else who didn't have a problem before. And also, because they were included in our facilities plan, we've had these on the books for a while.
Right.
That's why they're very nearly ready to go. They just weren't funded adequately enough to be able to complete those projects. North Elkhorn was scheduled in 2002, I believe, is when we started the design for it. Here we are at 2008 and still trying to finish it.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. Charlie, can you come up just for a second? You've been asked a lot of questions about the project and program management and outsourcing and the different things that you're going to do. And my question kind of hits closer to home. Do you have all the personnel in place on staff to do the work that needs to be done? Not speaking so much of the management part or the outsourcing that you talked about earlier, but actual bodies on staff to do what needs to be done.
Not entirely. No, we, I think it was just last week that there was a blue sheet for where we abolished some positions and created 3 new environmental inspectors along with a program specialist. One of the reasons why we created those positions is because we need to have those people out on the street doing inspections, doing enforcement work, because that's one of the things that we were dramatically lacking in the stormwater program, is that I'm not convinced that we weren't doing some of the things that we should have been doing. We just weren't doing them efficiently and documenting what we were doing. And so those are 3 positions that I can name. You know, we have some other positions within the division that are part of the foundation of what we do. As Cheryl was mentioning earlier about the foundation work and then laying this on top of it, is that, yeah, I'd like to be able to fill those positions as well. You know, if I've got enough electricians at the treatment plant, then hopefully we won't have to worry about electrical problems at the plant. Okay. Right now, I have a vacancy as an electrician at Town Branch. We had tried to fill that position once, and the person declined it, but that position's been vacant since March.
Okay, how many positions are vacant, or how many positions do you want to create in order to get the work done that you need to get done?
The answer to the first question I can't give you. I'd have to go back and compile that, but I can provide that to you and whatever council members that want to see that. She might have it herself. But as far as how many positions do I want, in the financial model and the rate increase that's being proposed right now, I have some additional engineering, 2 additional engineering positions in there, and also an engineering tech. It's my intention that we'll be filling out the PAQs and moving those forward to get those to be an improved strength, because I think moving forward in conjunction with the program management, that's appropriate for right now. As far as the number of inspectors that we need to do the stormwater component of it, there's still some of that planning work that needs to be done, because there's a big component of that still resides in engineering, because it's associated with new development, and whether as far as erosion and sediment control. And you know, I've been focusing on my part of it. I haven't had a chance recently to talk to Don Kelly as far as where they are in their planning aspect of it. But you'll be seeing those things. That's part of this overall program management. Help us figure out where we need to be to get these things done. But the first thing, first business order is to come up with the protocols and develop the databases, because I don't want to hire a bunch of people for them to sit around wondering what we're doing. This is what we're doing.
But considering how long it takes to hire someone once you make the decision that that person needs to be hired, do you need to go ahead and start that process now? Because it's going to take a few months to get them on board, right?
That will be happening very soon. And like I said, the 3 environmental inspectors and the program specialist was my first cut out of that. And so those people will help get the program moving as those other folks come in on board. Okay. Could you do me a favor? Could you put together a spreadsheet that shows the positions that you're going to need filled, whether they have to be created or they're just vacant right now, and then a timeline for when they need to come on board to be able to do the things that you need to be done with respect to the consent decree? And then can you provide that to all the council members maybe by next Tuesday? Is that possible? Week after? Why don't you give me the
a
week
couple.
after?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in pretty popular demand this week, as a lot of folks are, so.
I'm keeping him pretty occupied.
Okay. What I'd like...
Let me inject one thing there. I don't have any problem with our providing that spreadsheet with the understanding that it's going to be an evolving document. As we get further and further into our assessments, we're going to conclude, I'm confident, that we need fewer people here, more people someplace else, and all of that will just need to be understood on the front end, that this will be an evolving document.
Right, and to that accord, what I'd like to do is receive that document, and then I presume that the hiring freeze isn't going to affect these positions.
Right. They will have a separate source of funding, and the hiring freeze is really targeting primarily, not exclusively, but primarily general funded employees.
Okay, well, when we get that document, and I know that it's going to be a moving, living document, could we get from the administration sort of a timeline on when we're going to start to get these folks online and what we have to do to make that happen? I know that the administration's looking at trying to streamline the process for hiring, because it takes, how many months right now? 6 months. Obviously, the databases will be built by the time that happens. But can you work with the council so that we know that things are being set into motion, and also if we can streamline these, since they're going to have dedicated funds attached to their salaries, maybe we don't have to take the full 6 months to get it done?
Sure.
Okay. Unless you have, Commissioner or Mr. Martin, anything you want to add?
No, like I said, we'll be able to characterize this, and I'm glad the mayor added that, because that is an important thing. It's a moving target. One of the things I'm concerned about is that there will be a huge effort to get us in the inspection mode, in the maintenance mode, but after a while, things will plane out, especially in the enforcement part of it. When we start actually doing enforcement with folks, it's been my experience, I did enforcement with EPA for 3 years, is that it's heavy on the front end and everybody starts getting with the program, and then things have a tendency to plane out. You're always going to have folks who are recalcitrant, but overall, it's kind of like speeding, as everybody slows down after they realize that the radar gun's out there.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Cheryl, for your presentation, and Charlie for your answers. And just one area I wanted to ask some questions about, and that is the in the consent decree, there's a lot of information and requirement about new construction. And I wanted to know if you're starting to flesh out any kind of a plan to work with the home builder community, the development community, and how far along are you on that? What do you foresee?
We have not begun to reach out and engage different specific organizations, because we were essentially waiting on this day. If we tried to begin to have dialogue too soon, there was concern that we would compromise the confidentiality agreement that we had to. But at the same time, behind the scenes, Daryl and myself have been working very hand in hand on developing protocols for completing erosion and sediment control inspections in new development sites. Marwan and his folks have had dialogue with that as well. I had the most recent version of it I took home with me this weekend. We need to set up a meeting and try to refine that, because once we agree for ourselves what the protocol is going to be, then's the opportunity to engage those folks. Similarly, we have 4 partnering workshops that are scheduled for, I believe, March next month, each half-day sessions. 2 of the half-day sessions will involve sanitary sewers. The other 2 half-days will involve storm sewers. And things we do in these partnering workshops is some things that are routine. We update the exaction information. We update standard drawings. We do those things every year. But I set them up this year to where a considerable amount of time is going to be devoted to the consent decree obligations, because this is where you get the home builders, the contractors, and those folks, because it's partnering workshops related to the engineering manuals, and that's a good target audience for us.
So they're all in those meetings?
Yes. If we're going to be talking about the consent decree, I have a feeling it'll be standing room only.
I do too. Well, now back to the protocols that you're talking about and working on. So will those come as new ordinances? Will they be incorporated into the engineering manuals, or how do you envision that becoming an effective ordinance, so to speak?
My guess is that they would be incorporated into the manuals. Typically, protocols, I think, are too detailed to become an ordinance. I think the ordinance would I'm not an attorney, but my guess is that the ordinance would say that we have to do this in order to reduce this to the maximum extent practicable, because that's what the Clean Water Act says. How we do it, obviously, is an evolving thing as well, and that we would develop these protocols. You know, the enforcement aspect of it is that, you know, you might issue somebody a notice of violation, but that doesn't necessarily mean enforcement. It isn't until you go to civil penalties. Then that gets very prescriptive by ordinance, and we would be coming to the council about how we did enforcement activities. But the protocol for conducting inspections and those kind of things, I don't see those as being ordinance level.
So we'll be basically updating the engineering manuals through this process. And then will the enforcement aspect move from engineering to water quality, or where will enforcement be?
The enforcement part that was in engineering transferred to me.
Already, you have that.
Yes, that came with the stormwater program. And so right now the enforcement belongs with me, but Commissioner Taylor, I'll let her speak to that, because there's been discussion about it at the department level.
Okay.
Do you want to touch on it now, or?
That's one of those internal systems that we need more detail. But what we have the opportunity to do the inspections, plan to have the opportunity to provide notices of violation, how we're going to interact with public safety, and that enforcement strategy is not clear at this point. But for now, we think we're going to own that whole system.
And you'll own enforcement for new construction?
Yes. But that's still one of those systems that we have not really talked about internally. Those are the areas where I don't have a lot of details to give you yet, but I know it has to be done. It has to be done very quickly. We have to start doing these inspections on construction sites right away. That's why Charlie's worked to get inspectors in the field, but we're still discussing the nuances of how that would unfold as far as a procedure is concerned. Do you have anything to add?
But yes, I do, I guess. Yeah, the inspections, as things stand right now, will still be done for new development in engineering. The enforcement aspect of it will be done out of the Division of Water and Air Quality, because the person who used to do their enforcement came to my division as part of the reorganization. The reason why we're doing it this way right now and trying to develop our protocols that way, we're going to have new development inspectors out there already. They're going to be looking at curbs and gutters and sidewalks and all the things that they look at in new development. To send a separate inspector out there just to look at silt fences and those kind of things sounds grossly inefficient to me. And so we want to allow that inspector to be able to look at all these things with the proper protocols and the proper documentation that goes along with it. If a particular property owner is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they would issue them a notice of violation listing what the corrective actions were. My division would get a paper copy of that. If that person doesn't do it in the time frame they were asked, they're referred to enforcement. Now my division takes over and we do the enforcement part of it that has penalties.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because if one division is inspecting and a different division's enforcing, we need to be sure that communication is very strong and quick.
But that's the way the state does it, and that's not unusual for a lot of folks. Is that, you know, enforcement's kind of a different thing. You know, is that you're focused more on what the law says that you're supposed to do, as opposed to actually physically inspecting the technical aspect of it. You know, like I said, that's what's been recommended by me to staff, that they feel like is the most effective and efficient way to do it, and so we're trying to make it work that way, if that's the most efficient way for us to be able to do it.
I'm all for efficiency, so very good. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Beard.
Just a couple of points. Thank you, Mayor. I forgot to ask you before, Cheryl, if at all possible, there are a couple of tables in your presentation. I started to say in your slides, but they aren't slides anymore, are they? If they could be blown up and presented to us on 8.5 by 11 so they'd be readable, it'd be helpful. Second question, which is probably more pertinent to some of the questions Charlie, we've been talking about recently. Supposedly, anyway, we're to lose roughly 200 employees this coming fall due to the change in formula on the retirement program. And is that going to hit your area harder with tenured people, or?
Let me try to deal with that just a little bit and say we really don't know who's going to be retiring when, and don't feel comfortable asking those kinds of questions, as I'm sure you can appreciate. A lot of that is driven by policies that will be made by the legislature and the governor over the course of the next couple of months as they go through the process of reviewing the pension reform proposals that are coming forward. So I think it's safe to say that we really don't know what's going to happen on that front just yet. For two reasons. One, we don't know who might do something if the policies indicated that was a wise decision. Second, we don't know what the policies are going to be. So it's pretty speculative right now.
Okay, well, it's been a concern of mine. What was it, 2 years ago we lost 80 through not a similar type situation, but a situation where we did lose a bunch of key individuals, and it could really hurt you if some of those folks are in your areas and you're dependent upon them or would like to depend upon them. Anyway, as you say, Mayor, it will unfold, I guess, over time.
You raise a very legitimate point, though, and make no mistake about it, and we're just going to have to monitor that and then try to deal with the circumstances as they unfold. Unfortunately, I just don't know how we can plan for it right at the moment. I don't have anybody else on my list. Let me just conclude by saying Commissioner Taylor's a relative newcomer, and she's been working very hard to get up to speed since she arrived on the scene in December, and I've been extremely pleased with the progress we have made as a consequence of her involvement with urban county government. And I don't think I need to tell the folks on the council what an outstanding job Charlie Martin has done throughout this entire process. Charlie, you've gone above and beyond the call of duty in working through this, and I'm very appreciative of that. Let me also add Commissioner Don Kelly, who was on the point with a lot of the engineering issues and on the sanitary sewer front for a number of months, did an enormous amount of work. And lawyers get a bad rap all the time, but I want to tell you, Commissioner Logan Askew and our outside counsel, Jack Bender, have done a magnificent job. And I will say that without fear of contribution. I do know something about good lawyering. And both these guys have really done an outstanding job for their client, urban county government, and for the citizens of Lexington. So thanks very much to you all. That concludes our presentations. Next item on the business is the council report. And first person I have on my list is Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just had one comment, and that was about the promotion ceremony this morning at the Division of Police. It was really wonderful day, and I appreciated your comments because all of us up here know that if we don't have a really strong, good police force and a really strong, good fire department, a lot of the other part is not going to take priority. And it was really satisfying to see some of the police officers I've worked with now for a long time who've risen up through the ranks and are now assistant chiefs and commanders. And so I really do offer congratulations to our Division of Police. It was a really good morning.
Thank you very much. Councilmember James.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of announcements. This Friday, February 22nd, will be the Black History Month celebration sponsored by Parks and Recreation at the Dunbar Community Center. That event will be held at 7 o'clock at Dunbar Community Center, which I don't know the address specifically, but it's on Upper Street. If you have any questions regarding that event, please call me at 258-3216. I'll be happy to give you more information. Also, I'm going to pass around, if council members will take one of these cards, there will be the statewide, for my information here, the statewide tree seminar will be held here in Lexington. Our tree board is sponsoring that together with the Kentucky Division of Forestry, and we have contributed to this event. But I'm asking each council member from your district and the mayor as well, to please find at least one person you know that loves trees, loves talking about trees. We all know one person that has either one particular tree they're interested in or cares about Arbor Day, and invite that participant or invite that person to come to the tree seminar and to share in that experience. I believe this is the third annual for this event. And I have the privilege of serving on the tree board and have learned so much about trees and how important they are and what benefit they are to our community. So I'm very thankful to be a part of that, and I hope that you will join us. You should have all received an invitation. Also, up on this screen, you'll see it's a book cover. This is a book, a children's book called Perfect Timing. How Isaac Murphy became one of the world's greatest jockeys. And the wonderful thing about this book is that Isaac Murphy was born somewhere here near Lexington. And we actually we are in the process of developing a plan to create the Isaac Murphy Memorial Art Garden, which will be at the site it's at the corner of Midland and 3rd. And I thought I'd read just a little quick excerpt, and it's showing how popular Lexington is by being part of this children's book. This is written by Patsy Trollinger, and Patsy will be at the Carnegie Center at 5:30 today, signing these books from 5:30 to 6:30. But I thought I'd just read a little quick section of this. Isaac walked quickly along the streets of Lexington, carrying a large basket as if it weighed nothing at all. He was short for a boy of 12, but strong. His arms had grown, used to the heavy work he did for his mother's laundry business, carrying water, setting up wash tubs, delivering finished loads of laundry. His grandparents had been slaves, but now Isaac was free. But Kentucky had very few schools for black students. He spent every day working with his mother. On that spring day in 1873, Isaac made a delivery to the Owings house at the perfect time. Mr. Owings owned a stable of racehorses, and he needed to hire some new jockeys. The strong boy behind the laundry basket was just the right size for riding. Mr. Owings asked a question: would Isaac like to learn to ride a thoroughbred? And thus started the exciting tale of Isaac Murphy and how he came to win the first Kentucky Derbies, which were actually held at the Kentucky Horse Racing Association, which used to sit right at the Bluegrass Aspendale site. So it's very exciting history. It's definitely a legacy, and this is one of the Isaac Murphy Memorial Art Garden is one of the projects that's included in the Legacy Initiative, which the Knight Foundation has sponsored. So I hope that you all will at least check out this book, Perfect Timing, from the library. If not, purchase it. If not, make it over to Carnegie Center at 5:30 to get your book signed by Patsy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember McCord.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. Rama, if you don't mind just coming to the mic here in just a second, I want to ask you a quick question. But while he's coming forward, just an announcement. The Stonewall Neighborhood Association will be holding their annual meeting Tuesday, March 4th at 7 p.m. at Stonewall Elementary. And my congratulations go out to 3 state finalists this past weekend at the Kentucky State High School Wrestling Championship. Dunbar's John Voth, who last year had won a state championship, was runner-up this year, and Lexington has 2 individual state champions. Matt Zarth from Henry Clay, who repeated as a state champion and is only a junior, and Lafayette's own Matt Green at 2:15. And my congratulations go out to Andy Critchfield, the coach at Henry Clay, and Chris McCoy, the coach at Lafayette, and would like to have them come in at some point in time here and honor those folks. So again, congratulations go out to them. Rama, just real quick, we've gotten a couple of calls from some folks in the district just asking about 311 and dialing it on a cell phone, and is that possible, and what happens now? Does it apply to all services? I just wanted to try and get that out there for the public.
Yeah, we've been working on the contracts. They're all in place. Singular was the last one to come on board. Everybody should be working within 90 days. I think you'll see Verizon in effect in about 30 days.
Okay.
And so within the next 90 days, all cell phone companies.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. One, I know, Mayor, you've announced this publicly, but tomorrow night the 6th District is pleased to host the Mayor's Night Out at Spessarian College, and I encourage all the 6th District residents to come on out and have a night out with the mayor. Of course, anyone can come, but I especially want the 6th District residents to come and share their thoughts with the mayor. Also, on Wednesday at 4 o'clock in these chambers, we'll be hosting the Chase Leadership Academy, which is a base of high school students. This year they're from Bryan Station High School, and we'll be doing a mock councilman. I know Councilmember James has agreed to come help, and Councilmember McCord, but anyone would like to come speak to the group and help us, please come Wednesday, tomorrow, at 4 p.m. here in the chambers. The significance of this academy is it could be the last, given the changes that have occurred at Chase. I think they're currently looking for a new home for the academy. So hopefully there's a new bank or organization in our community that would be willing to continue some of the leadership work they've done in working with these students, because it's a valuable program. And last but not least, I know, Mayor, I've got several calls about our new benefit structure. I know we just implemented a whole new, what they call positive enrollment, and we're already into the new year, but the benefits are not on Humana's website. Our benefit book, whatever we can do to either get our employees a copy of what our benefits are, either on our website, because Humana's, when you click on the link, and I tried it myself, it says information not available. So a lot of people have questions about, does it cover this or that, and that's just not available. So if we can find a way to get that available to our employees.
Commissioner Coe, would you work with Director Allen and the folks in HR to try to address that and let Councilmember Stinnett know what the outcome is?
That'll be great. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have some neighborhood association meetings to announce. First one, Thursday evening, the 21st, 7 p.m., the Spiegel Heights Neighborhood Association will meet at the neighborhood church. On Monday night, February 26th, two neighborhoods will meet. Radcliffe, Marlboro, 7 o'clock in the community center in Marlboro Park, and the Oakwood Neighborhood Association, also at 7 p.m. in the community center in Oakwood Park. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Beard.
I've been having trouble with this mic today. It's been getting in my way, and I just punished it. I would like to ask that the NDF allocation for this week be make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Councilmember Beard, second by Councilmember Myers to approve the NDF. Any discussion? Those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Councilmember Myers?
I was going to move approval of the NDS list, or the NDF list. Thank you.
All right. Anything else in council reports? All right, that brings us down to the mayor's report. I think a number of appointments were circulated earlier, so a motion to approve would be in order. Thank you, Councilmember Lane, and second by Councilmember Gordon to approve the mayor's report. Any discussion? Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Let me just simply take 30 seconds here to say today is a historic day in Urban County government's history. The vote you cast earlier today will make a huge difference in the quality of our water in our streams and rivers in Fayette County, and I'm very proud to have been a part of that whole effort. the council has worked extremely hard throughout the course of the last year to be involved in the process. I know a lot of you have taken time to sort through a lot of different issues. I really appreciate your diligence, and I appreciate your support of the consent decree today. Thank you. That is the last item on the agenda, with the exception of public comment on issues not on the agenda. Is there any public comment today? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Councilmember Stinnett, I think, and a second by Councilmember McCord to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you very much.